Mistress called the millionaire. While he was with his pregnant wife, she heard everything. A single, startling ring cut through the calm of a late summer evening, echoing across the grand foyer of the Carrington estate. Marcus Carrington, the self-made millionaire whose composure was as legendary as his empire, glanced at the screen, and the man who'd mastered acquisitions felt, for the first time, utterly powerless. His pregnant wife, Vanessa, spotted the tension etched on his face. In that moment, a name neither of them wanted to hear spilled from his phone's speaker: Annalise Montgomery, Marcus's secret lover. One phone call, overheard at exactly the wrong time, threatened to unhinge not only their marriage but their entire world. Marcus Carrington often boasted that nothing caught him off guard. He'd built Carrington Financial from the ground up, transforming a small consultancy into a multi-million-dollar enterprise. His daily life was governed by routines and precisely timed schedules. That late summer evening, however, as he stood in the living room discussing baby names with his wife, Vanessa, his carefully orchestrated world teetered on the brink. The phone rang with a piercing clarity that set Vanessa's nerves on edge. She wasn't used to seeing Marcus flinch. He was the epitome of calm, the man who never hesitated, never revealed even a flicker of doubt. But something in his eyes shifted when he read the caller ID. "I'll be right back," he mumbled, stepping away, voice clipped. Vanessa, cradling her growing belly with one hand, watched him hurry toward the adjacent hallway. Her intuition flared he was hiding something. Against her better judgment, she followed, footsteps silent on the polished floor. Vanessa, staying just out of sight, heard Marcus's murmured greeting. What came next made her blood turn to ice. A woman's voice, low and sultry, spoke his name with intimate familiarity. Each syllable dripped with possession. Vanessa's heart pounded so loudly she feared Marcus would hear it. She inched closer, flattening herself against the wall. The conversation continued in hushed tones, but she caught telltale phrases, references to a recent trip. A yacht, hush, hush rendezvous. Her stomach twisted into a knot, a swirl of disbelief and dread. Marcus whispered urgently, "I can't talk right now." But Annalise Montgomery Vanessa would only later connect the voice to that name, pushed on, confident, unrelenting. She teased him for being secretive, mentioned the promises he'd made. Then, with a careless laugh, she said, "I still feel the taste of champagne from our last night together." Vanessa's knees threatened to buckle. In that raw moment, her world was split into a before and an after, and all the illusions she clung to began to crumble. The moment the call ended, Vanessa confronted Marcus with eyes blazing. She demanded answers. Pregnant or not, her fury was a force of nature. "Who was that?" she asked, voice trembling. Marcus hesitated, and in that pause, everything Vanessa feared solidified. A tear slid down her cheek. His silence was all the confirmation she needed. Still, he tried a flimsy defense. "It's just a misunderstanding," he lied, voice too quick, too rigid. "Nothing serious." Vanessa refused to let him off so easily. "You promised you were in London last month for a conference. Were you even there?" Her tone rose, echoing across the cavernous living room. Marcus paled, words failing him. His phone buzzed again, as if the universe had chosen that moment to hammer in the truth. "I won't lie," he finally said, eyes downcast. "I was with someone else. It was a mistake." Before Vanessa could unleash a storm of questions, the phone buzzed a third time. Marcus's gaze flickered to it, torn between damage control and a frantic desire to shield Vanessa from more hurt. The confrontation ended abruptly when she stormed out, tears threatening to choke her. Vanessa locked herself in the upstairs bedroom, ignoring Marcus's frantic knocks on the door. She clutched a pillow, burying her face as if it might muffle the anguish coursing through her. Betrayal felt like a dagger in her back, twisting with every new realization. She whispered to herself, "He cheated on me while I'm pregnant with his child." The words tasted bitter on her tongue. She flashed back to the day she told Marcus she was pregnant, how he'd lifted her in joy, the tears of excitement glimmering in his eyes. That memory now felt tainted, an illusion overshadowed by the voice on the phone. As minutes blurred into hours, she thought about whether to confront him again. Part of her longed for immediate answers. When did this affair begin? How many lies had she swallowed? Another part of her wanted to flee, to run from the living hell she found herself in. But the helpless kick in her belly reminded her she couldn't just escape. She had their unborn child to consider. Vanessa met Marcus when she was a junior marketing associate at a conference in Boston. He was the keynote speaker, a rising star in the finance world, known for his savvy deals and philanthropic endeavors. She had been charmed by his confidence, that rare balance of ambition and warmth. Over coffee breaks, they discovered a shared love for travel, antique literature, and quiet. Sundays spent reading. Their courtship felt like a fairy tale. Marcus whisked her away on weekend trips, showering her with thoughtful gifts, never the ostentatious trappings of wealth, but items that spoke to her interests, like a first edition of her favorite novel or a voucher for a local writing workshop. When he proposed at a small private beach, it seemed every star in the sky shone just for them. That memory now was like salt in her wounds. Their relationship had once been the envy of their social circle. How had it devolved into clandestine phone calls and lies? Marcus waited outside the bedroom, pacing the corridor, wearing a trench of anxiety into the expensive hardwood floors. His mind spiraled with self-reproach. In the harsh silence, he replayed every step that led him here, the impulsive attraction he felt for Annalise Montgomery, how he rationalized it as just harmless flirting at first. Then the business trip invites, the dinners that became more and more intimate. He'd never intended to betray Vanessa so profoundly. Yet one small step, then another, he found himself crossing lines he once swore he never would. When Vanessa announced her pregnancy, the jolt of reality made him consider ending things with Annalise. But he'd delayed, always finding excuses. And now, the monstrous burden of his indiscretion crushed him. He raised his fist to knock on the door again, but shame coiled around him. He had no explanation that could undo the pain he'd caused. He whispered through the door, "Vanessa, please, I'm sorry." But all that greeted him was silence. The next morning, Vanessa called her closest friend, Lydia Bishop, a sharp-witted attorney who had known Vanessa since college. Lydia arrived at the estate within the hour, greeting the staff with brisk nods as she made her way upstairs. Finding Vanessa teary-eyed and shaking, Lydia's protective instincts flared. "Tell me everything," she urged. Vanessa recounted the horrifying phone call, the partial confession, and the soul-crushing doubts that followed. Lydia's jaw tightened. She offered no sugarcoating. "We should verify the extent of this affair," she said calmly, though her eyes betrayed fury. "I can call in some favors private investigators if needed. But first, think about your health. This stress isn't good for you or the baby." Vanessa nodded, drained. She confided that she'd barely slept, consumed by nightmares of Marcus in another woman's arms. Lydia gave her an assuring squeeze on the shoulder. "Breathe. I've got you. We'll figure this out step by step." Across town, in a sleek penthouse suite at the Grand Marquette Hotel, Annalise Montgomery stared at her phone, perplexed. Marcus had abruptly ended their call the night before and wouldn't answer her subsequent texts. Rather than retreat, Annalise's confidence flared. She decided that she deserved clarity. Annalise was no stranger to affluence. Raised in a wealthy circle, she had long since learned how to maneuver social dynamics to her advantage. Marcus Carrington intrigued her because he seemed genuinely captivated by her intellect and not merely her looks. Over months of secret rendezvous, she'd grown convinced their connection was deep. His talk of what-ifs and some days whetted her appetite for a more permanent arrangement. Now, Faced with his radio silence, Annalise refused to be dismissed. She considered Marcus a man of power and influence, and she thrived on the thrill of capturing such a man's heart. "If he thinks he can ghost me," she murmured, "he's sorely mistaken." Vanessa finally unlocked the bedroom door in the early afternoon, feeling marginally steadier but still far from calm. She found Marcus in the dining room, nursing a coffee gone cold. Their eyes met in a tense silence. "I want answers," Vanessa began, voice quiet but resolute. "No more excuses, no more lies." Marcus looked haunted, a shadow of his usual poised self. "Her name is Annalise Montgomery. It started at a charity event in Los Angeles," he confessed, his words slow and halting. "I was pulled in attracted, yes, but it was never meant to become this." Vanessa trembled with anger and heartbreak. "When I was sick those early months, when I had morning sickness so bad I could barely stand. You were with her. Did you even think about our child?" His expression contorted. "I never stopped caring about you. I just—" She cut him off. "Don't say you made a mistake. You made a choice." Vanessa retreated to the estate's library, a vaulted room lined with leather-bound tomes. She remembered how Marcus once surprised her there with a small string quartet for her birthday, playing her favorite Mozart concerto among the shelves of old books. The memory used to fill her with warmth. Now it stung. She drifted between the tall shelves, letting her fingertips brush dusty spines, trying to ground herself in something familiar. Tears threatened to overwhelm her again. She recalled how Marcus proposed, with a ring etched with their initials and the date they met. He'd said, "We'll face every challenge as a team." Where was that man now? The team they'd formed seemed to have disintegrated under the weight of his deceit. Vanessa pondered how swiftly love could morph into confusion and hurt. She felt trapped in a labyrinth of betrayal, longing for an exit but unable to see beyond the heartbreak. Diana Graves, the long-standing house manager who had served the Carrington family for over 2 decades, was not oblivious to the tension gripping the estate. She might have been soft-spoken, but her gaze missed little. Wiping down the counters, Diana heard raised voices. She'd always admired Vanessa's gentle heart and Marcus's ambition. Seeing them on the brink of collapse tore at her. She recalled Marcus as a teenager, grappling with the loneliness of losing his father at a young age. She remembered Vanessa's kindness when she first arrived as Marcus's fiancée, helping Diana in the kitchen despite not being asked. Diana silently prayed things would resolve, but the hush that followed each argument felt heavy with finality. Pausing in her task, she considered speaking up to comfort Vanessa, though she didn't want to overstep. With a resigned sigh, Diana placed the rag aside and went to check if Vanessa needed anything, her heart heavy with concern. By midday, Lydia cornered Marcus in his study, determined to speak her mind. She regarded him with steely eyes. "Let's cut the pleasantries. You hurt her badly." Marcus slumped in an oversized chair, pressing his palms together. "I'm aware," he said, throat tight. "I love her. I messed up. I got pulled into something I didn't know how to stop. Annalise made me feel admired. Not that it justifies anything." Lydia's jaw tightened. Vanessa's health is at stake. Stress can affect the baby. She leaned forward, voice razor sharp. "You need to consider the implications if she decides to leave you, legal, financial, emotional. We have to ensure Vanessa's protected." His gaze flickered with panic. "Leave me? She can't. I mean, you've destroyed her trust," Lydia cut in. "Nothing is guaranteed. If you truly love her, you'll do whatever it takes to make this right, or at least lessen the fallout." Marcus nodded, emotion choking him. He was beginning to grasp just how precarious his situation really was. Later that afternoon, Marcus's phone buzzed with a blocked number. He knew who it was before he even picked up. Annalise's voice, smooth and insistent, came through the line. "You can't just vanish, Marcus. Talk to me. He swallowed hard. Analyze. I told you this can't go on. I made a promise to my wife. A frigid silence followed, broken by Annalise's subdued laughter. So that's it. You use me for months and then drop me? Her fury crackled across the connection. I won't be shoved aside like your dirty secret. Marcus's pulse hammered. He glanced toward the closed door, aware that Vanessa could walk in at any time. He lowered his voice. I can't talk about this now. You'll talk to me, or I'll make sure Vanessa finds out even more. Don't underestimate what I know. The call ended abruptly, leaving Marcus in a cold sweat. Annalise had always been headstrong, but her threat was a new level of danger. The carefully constructed world he tried to mend was primed to explode. Night fell, cloaking the estate in silence. Vanessa lay in the guest bedroom, unable to bear sharing a bed with Marcus. She remembered how only weeks ago she'd be in his arms, whispering about baby names or future vacations. Now the warmth was replaced by a bitterness that gnawed at her. In her loneliness, she thought about the unborn child. Every flutter, every kick reminded her of the responsibility looming before her. Could she endure this heartbreak for the sake of her child, or would a bitter household be worse than a single-parent home brimming with love? She envisioned raising her baby alone, forging a fresh path free from deceit. Then she thought of the father-child bond she could be depriving her baby of, and her resolve wavered. Tears streamed down her cheeks. She felt betrayed, not just by Marcus, but by life's cruel twist. She believed wholeheartedly in the sanctity of marriage, and yet here she was, pregnant, uncertain, and frightened. Marcus knocked softly on the guest room door around midnight, voice trembling. "Vanessa?" She contemplated ignoring him, but after a lengthy pause, she replied, "What?" He stepped inside cautiously. The moonlight through the window revealed her puffy eyes, the tracks of tears glistening against her cheeks. Marcus sank to the floor by the bed. "I can't sleep," he admitted. "I'm so ashamed. I don't even know how to begin making this right." Vanessa stared at the ceiling, silent for a few moments. "Why now?" she finally asked, voice raw. "Why choose to tell me half-truths only after you get caught? What else are you hiding?" Marcus clenched his jaw. "That's all of it. The affair is done. I want it over." She let out a humorless laugh. "You think an affair like that just ends because you say so? Do you realize what you've done?" He couldn't answer. The weight of her devastation pressed on him like a physical force. Before he could attempt an apology, she rolled over, back turned. The following day, Vanessa had a routine prenatal appointment. Lydia insisted on accompanying her. Marcus offered to drive, but Vanessa refused. The tension between them was palpable as they left the estate in separate cars. Inside the clinic, Dr. Rebecca Talwar performed an ultrasound, her expert eyes scanning the monitor. The gentle rhythm of the baby's heartbeat filled the room, a sound that momentarily calmed Vanessa's stormy mind. After taking some measurements, Dr. Talwar studied Vanessa closely. "Your blood pressure's higher than normal," she said, her tone laced with concern. "It could be stress-related. Try to rest more and avoid emotional strain if you can." Vanessa forced a nod. Avoiding emotional strain seemed impossible. The stress was already embedded in every corner of her life. She left the office with fresh worry. If her turmoil affected the baby's health, she'd never forgive Marcus or herself. Word of the Carrington household troubles eventually reached Marcus's mother, Eleanor Carrington, who lived in a quiet retirement community by the sea. Though elderly, Eleanor was sharp-minded and fiercely protective of her son's marriage. She summoned Marcus to her place, refusing to accept excuses. Marcus arrived to find her in the sunroom, wrapped in a pastel shawl. She greeted him with a piercing gaze. "You've gotten yourself into quite the scandal," she said, voice subdued yet stern. He flinched, acknowledging her disappointment. "I messed up, Mother. It got out of hand." She gestured for him to sit. "Vanessa is carrying your child. I don't need the details, but I do know betrayal when I see it. You must make amends if you can." "Our family name has seen enough tragedy," she said, remembering Marcus's late father. "This is not just about reputation, but about respect and decency." Marcus felt the sting of her words. He promised he would do whatever it took, even though fear gnawed at him that it might already be too late. True to her pragmatic approach, Lydia discreetly hired a private investigator, Glenn Roberts. The aim was not to drag out scandal, but to gather facts. How long had Marcus been seeing Annalise? And were there any financial entanglements that might harm Vanessa? Glenn's investigation unearthed reservations at high-end hotels, lavish dinners, and even a weekend yacht rental in the Caribbean. Photographic evidence showed Marcus and Annalise, arm in arm, looking every bit the smitten couple. The dates coincided with times Marcus had told Vanessa he was on business trips. Lydia carefully relayed the findings to Vanessa. The revelations, though validating her suspicions, tore new wounds in her already battered heart. On top of it all, the PI discovered that Annalise was known in certain social circles as an heiress hunter, someone adept at finding wealthy partners, though her own background was plenty affluent. Vanessa felt ill, realizing Marcus had stumbled right into a trap. Whether he was willing or oblivious didn't matter. The damage was done. Devastated by the magnitude of his actions, laid bare in the investigator's report, Marcus decided to make a public stand. He confronted Annalise outside her downtown apartment complex, desperate to end things conclusively. She emerged from a black town car, dressed impeccably as always. Spotting Marcus, her expression switched from surprise to cool amusement. "You look terrible," she remarked, running a manicured finger through her hair. Marcus steeled himself. "This has to stop." Annalise's eyes narrowed. "I told you before, you don't just turn off what we had. Not after all those times you came to me, confided in me." He grimaced, recalling foolish moments of vulnerability he'd shared, perhaps misreading lust for comfort. "I made a mistake. I love my wife. I have to protect my family." She smirked. "Well, that's your choice, but don't expect me to vanish quietly." Her laughter trailed behind her as she sauntered into the building, leaving Marcus more anxious than ever. In the days that followed, Vanessa found herself sifting through old photo albums, searching for clues on how her life could have taken such a turn. She stumbled upon pictures from early in their relationship, the day trip to the countryside, their first holiday party at Carrington Financial. She traced Marcus's smile. In the photographs he looked genuinely happy, unburdened. She also dug deeper into Marcus's past, recalling half-forgotten anecdotes he'd mentioned about trust issues stemming from his father's infidelity. Had that unhealed trauma contributed to his own moral failings? She wrestled with the irony. He once promised her he'd never repeat those familial mistakes. When Lydia returned with yet another update from the PI hints that Annalise might plan to expose more details to the press, Vanessa's chest tightened. She remembered how protective Marcus had always been of his family's privacy. Now, their most intimate failures threatened to become tabloid fodder. Late one afternoon, Diana Graves found Vanessa in the garden, absently plucking at wilting roses. The older woman approached gently. "Miss Carrington," she said, voice laced with concern, "is there anything I can do?" Vanessa didn't flinch at the intrusion. Instead, she sighed. "I feel so lost." Diana placed a tentative hand on Vanessa's shoulder. "I've watched you and Mr. Carrington build a life here. You two seemed so strong." Vanessa blinked back tears. "That's what I thought. But apparently it was built on lies. Or maybe I just never saw the cracks forming." Diana hesitated, struggling between loyalty and compassion. "People make mistakes," she murmured. "Sometimes terrible ones. But you have a child on the way. It's worth asking whether this family can still mend." Vanessa nodded. uncertain. She appreciated Diana's kindness, but the question lingered, could she ever forgive a betrayal that cut so deep? Amid the turmoil, Marcus reached out to Dr. Albert Hoffman, a renowned marriage counselor recommended by one of his board members. Surprisingly, Vanessa agreed to attend an initial session, albeit warily. In the therapist's softly lit office, a gentle water feature gurgled in the corner, creating a veneer of calm that contrasted sharply with the tension between husband and wife. Dr. Hoffman began by asking them to recount their earliest memories of each other, reminding them of the foundation of their relationship. Vanessa described their first coffee date, how Marcus made her laugh with stories about financial clients who had bizarre requests. Marcus recounted feeling an electric sense of possibility when he first saw her bright smile. Then came the harder questions. What led Marcus to seek comfort in another woman? How long had Vanessa felt something was amiss? The session stirred heartbreak and hope in equal measure. By the end, tears flowed freely, but so did a sliver of understanding. Just as they began therapy, the media's interest in the Carrington affair intensified. A local gossip column, Inside Whitebridge, published a scathing piece alluding to Marcus's illicit affair with an enigmatic socialite. Though the article withheld names, the descriptions made it clear who the parties were. Photographers loitered outside the estate gates, waiting to snap pictures of a distraught Vanessa or a remorseful Marcus. Their presence rattled the staff and turned every trip out of the house into a tense ordeal. Vanessa loathed the intrusion, fear gripping her whenever she had to go to the doctor or run an errand. Each flash of a camera felt like a violation. Marcus, furious but also helpless, boosted security. He gave strict orders that no one was to be allowed onto the property without clearance. Yet the paparazzi were relentless, feeding off the possibility of capturing a meltdown or confrontation. To strategize, Lydia and Glenn Roberts met with Vanessa one evening. Marcus, in a show of solidarity, joined them. They gathered in the study, an unlikely war room for such personal drama. Glenn spread out folders containing evidence of Annalise's communications and possible next moves. She's been in contact with at least 2 tabloid freelancers, he said, tapping on a highlighted line of text. Likely bargaining for an exclusive story. Vanessa's face paled. She pressed a hand to her abdomen protectively. We can't let her do that. This will destroy us, and our child shouldn't be born into a media circus. Lydia sipped her tea, eyes narrowed. Legally, we can't stop her from speaking out unless we can prove defamation. But if it's true, it's not defamation. Marcus exhaled shakily. I'll pay her off if I have to, he said, desperation clinging to his words. Vanessa stiffened at the thought of hush money. She wanted the fiasco to end, but the notion of using money to cover his sins made her stomach churn. Marcus couldn't sleep. Each time he closed his eyes, he saw Vanessa's tear-streaked face, or he heard Annalise's mocking laughter. The guilt weighed on him like an anchor. He had always prided himself on being a problem solver, someone who tackled obstacles methodically. But this emotional quagmire defied all his business instincts. He wandered through the house at night, recalling happier times. In the foyer, he pictured Vanessa, radiant after he proposed. In the library, he remembered reading her favorite poetry. Even the kitchen stirred memories of them cooking together, laughter echoing off marble countertops. At one point, he paused at the nursery they were preparing. Pale yellow walls and a half-assembled crib awaited their child. Marcus ran a hand over the crib's rail, tears stinging his eyes. He whispered a broken apology into the silence, wondering if the child he was about to meet might someday hate him for the pain he inflicted on their mother. Vanessa awoke before sunrise, determined to reclaim control. She found Marcus in the kitchen, fiddling with the espresso machine. He appeared haggard, as though he hadn't slept in days. Marcus, she said, voice steeled with purpose, I've made a decision. He turned, dread washing over his features. What is it? She drew a breath. I'm willing to continue therapy and see where it leads on one condition. You must end all communication with Annalise immediately and permanently. No hush money, no clandestine phone calls. If she threatens to go public, we'll face it together. He hesitated. And if she talks? Vanessa's eyes flashed with resolve. Then we confront that storm together. But you can't keep playing both sides. If I find out you contacted her in any way behind my back, we're done. Do you understand? A wave of relief mixed with fear coursed through him. I promise, he said, voice trembling, I'm done with her. That very morning, Marcus composed a short, definitive email to Annalise, stating there would be no further contact. He blocked her number on his phone, unfollowed her on social media, and ensured his personal assistant was aware that any attempt on Annalise's part to reach him should be rejected. In a fleeting moment of weakness, he almost dialed her number, perhaps to offer some personal closure, to say a final goodbye. But Vanessa's ultimatum echoed in his mind. He couldn't afford another misstep, not if he was serious about salvaging his marriage. For a man used to controlling every aspect of his life, severing contact felt oddly like losing. Yet he recognized that continuing any relationship, even a simple phone call, could irrevocably destroy what little trust Vanessa had left. Despite blocking her, Annalise wasn't one to concede easily. She appeared at Marcus's office unannounced. The receptionist, flustered, tried to stall her, but Annalise glided past with practiced confidence. Security guards rushed in, but she demanded to speak to Marcus. Marcus emerged from a meeting to find Annalise in the lobby, an elegant storm of fury. Your staff is treating me like a criminal, she hissed. You owe me a conversation. He kept his composure, though his heart thumped violently. I told you, we're done. Please leave. Her eyes gleamed with hurt and rage. I gave you everything. I was there when you needed an escape. Is that worth nothing? The tension in the lobby was thick enough to slice. Employees gawked from behind desks and glass partitions. Marcus gestured for the guards. Escort Miss Montgomery out, please. As she was led away, she hurled one final barb. Don't think I won't remember this, Marcus. Actions have consequences. Vanessa and Marcus continued their therapy sessions with Dr. Hoffman. In one particularly intense meeting, Dr. Hoffman asked Vanessa to describe, in explicit detail, the pain the affair caused her. Vanessa, hands clenched, poured out her devastation. I felt worthless, like I wasn't enough, especially while pregnant. I imagined him choosing someone else over me at a time when I needed him most. Her voice broke. That image haunts me. Marcus's eyes brimmed with tears. Hearing her articulate the extent of her anguish was almost unbearable. He confessed feelings of guilt, self-loathing, and fear that he'd become like his unfaithful father. Dr. Hoffman guided them to acknowledge each other's pain without defensiveness. Acknowledgement is the first step toward rebuilding trust, he said calmly. Marcus, look Vanessa in the eye and apologize without qualification. Marcus obeyed, a trembling sincerity in his voice. Vanessa accepted his words, but made it clear that time would tell if the apology held real weight. Meanwhile, speculation about the scandal continued online. Anonymous tips claimed Annalise was shopping a tell-all interview to gossip channels. Vanessa deliberately avoided reading the tabloids, but curious acquaintances occasionally forwarded her articles laden with half-truths. At a brunch with old-school friends, she found herself bombarded with sympathetic inquiries and unsubtle prodding for salacious details. She politely deflected, forcing a smile she didn't feel. Inside, she felt raw, humiliated that the world had become a voyeur to her marriage's darkest moments. Some friends offered genuine concern while others reveled in the drama, whispering behind her back about how even the perfect marriages can fall apart. Vanessa left early, her chest tight. She realized that no matter how strong her resolve, she was fighting a war on multiple fronts, within her marriage, within herself, and within a ruthless public sphere hungry for gossip. As weeks passed, Marcus and Vanessa found small ways to reconnect. They began sharing quiet breakfasts, discussing mundane daily schedules. Sometimes they even laughed at old inside jokes, though the laughter often ended in a sad, questioning silence. One afternoon, they took a short walk around the grounds, autumn leaves crunching beneath their feet. Vanessa spoke of her hopes for the baby, how she wanted to be the kind of mother who was both nurturing and strong. Marcus listened, genuinely engrossed. He shared his fears, how he worried he'd never be a good father, that his betrayal had somehow stained the family he wanted to build. Vanessa didn't reassure him. She simply listened. Later that evening, she told Lydia about the walk. "It's tentative," Vanessa said, "but it's something. We have to remember what brought us together in the first place, or there's no hope." Lydia nodded, sensing that while healing was possible, it was far from guaranteed. Glenn Roberts dug deeper into Annalise's background. He discovered that her late father had squandered a sizable portion of the family inheritance, leaving her mother to rebuild. Annalise grew up witnessing financial instability masked by outward appearances of wealth. Possibly, her pursuit of affluent men stemmed from a fear of ever returning to that state of vulnerability. This didn't absolve her role in the affair, but it painted a portrait of someone driven by underlying anxieties and learned opportunism. Glenn explained to Lydia and Vanessa that Annalise rarely formed emotional attachments unless they guaranteed material security. She left a trail of heartbroken and significantly poorer ex-partners in her wake. Vanessa absorbed the information in grim silence. It pained her to think Marcus had fallen into such a cliché, but part of her also felt a twisted pang of empathy. "She's dangerous," she said softly, "but she's also broken." Despite the tension, a baby shower had long been planned by Vanessa's relatives. They decided to go forward, hoping a joyful event might provide respite from the ongoing chaos. Close friends and family gathered in the estate's garden, decorated with pastel streamers and balloons. Vanessa tried to focus on the celebration, greeting guests with polite smiles. Marcus made a brief appearance, offering warm, if subdued, thanks to those who brought gifts. The mood was cheerful on the surface, but an undercurrent of unease fluttered among the attendees who knew the rumors. Midway through the event, a small group of paparazzi managed to snap photos over the garden fence. Their cameras clicked furiously, capturing the tension in Vanessa's eyes. Security chased them off, but the damage was done. The next day, tabloids ran headlines like "Baby Joy" in the midst of betrayal. Vanessa was furious, yet powerless to stop them. In a private moment after the baby shower, Lydia spoke bluntly to Marcus. "You need to step up more than you have. Vanessa shouldn't be dealing with the press alone. Where have you been?" He rubbed the back of his neck. "I'm trying to repair my relationship with her. I figured giving her space at her shower was for the best." Lydia shook her head. "She needed you by her side, showing everyone you're committed. This isn't just about giving her space. It's about proving to her and to the world that you're unwavering in your support." Marcus felt a pang of shame. I thought I was doing what she wanted. Ask her. Talk to her. Don't guess. We're past guesswork. Lydia's words struck home. He realized he'd been treading lightly out of guilt rather than openly communicating. If he wanted redemption, he had to be more transparent and present than ever before. Sometime in late autumn, Vanessa reached a crossroads. The baby was due in a matter of weeks, and the emotional roller coaster had left her drained. She told Marcus they needed a serious, uninterrupted conversation. They sat in the drawing room, the fireplace crackling softly. Vanessa's hands trembled. "Marcus," she began, voice quivering, "I'm nearing my limit. I can't be in a constant state of suspicion or heartbreak. He swallowed hard. I understand, she continued. Doctor Hoffman asked me what I need from you. I've been thinking about it. I need honesty, complete, unfiltered honesty. I need to know there are no more secrets, no more hidden accounts or phone calls. And I need to see consistent action that shows you're truly sorry. Marcus nodded, tears at the corners of his eyes. I promise, Vanessa. I'll give you everything, financial records, phone logs, whatever you need. She let out a tremulous breath. Then let's see if we can fix what's left, for our child's sake, if nothing else. True to his word, Marcus laid out all his financial statements, business travel logs, and personal phone records for Vanessa to review. The gesture was part confession, part desperate bid for transparency. Vanessa pored over them, heart in her throat. She saw the lavish hotel suites and the precise dates that overlapped with her pregnancy's toughest moments. Late-night calls charged to a business account, gifts purchased at high-end boutiques in Los Angeles. It was overwhelming, and at times Vanessa had to step away to calm her racing thoughts. But each piece of evidence, though painful, chipped away at the unknown. For the first time in months, she felt some semblance of control. She was no longer left in the dark. Marcus hovered anxiously, wanting to explain every detail, but he respected Vanessa's space, recognizing that his words might sound like excuses. Seeing the undeniable, stark record of his betrayal was sobering. Any illusions he harbored about minimizing his wrongdoing vanished. As winter crept in, the estate transformed under a blanket of softly falling snow. Vanessa's due date loomed, and she found her emotions swinging between cautious optimism and lingering resentment. Marcus took time off work to be there for her, driving her to appointments, setting up the nursery, and even assisting with childbirth classes. Their progress was fragile but tangible. The tension persisted, yet moments of genuine connection resurfaced. One evening, Marcus helped Vanessa onto the porch swing so they could watch the snow drift down in silence. She leaned her head on his shoulder. If only for a minute, he whispered. I'm here, Vanessa. I'm not going anywhere. She nodded, but caution flickered in her gaze. Too many promises had been broken. Still, the gentle hush of snowfall lent a temporary serenity, hinting that maybe, just maybe, there was a path forward. Annalise Montgomery had been quiet for weeks. However, she made a last-ditch move, contacting a tabloid with photographic proof of her and Marcus together, candid shots from the Caribbean yacht trip. She claimed she had explicit text messages detailing the affair. The tabloid teased these revelations, planning to release a bombshell article. Vanessa braced herself when word reached them. Marcus appeared ready to fight tooth and nail, but Vanessa did something unexpected. She asked him to let it happen. I'm done living in fear, she said, hand on her swollen belly. If she publishes those photos, let the world see. We'll handle the fallout. I don't want any more hush money or secrets. We face this head on, or we don't face it at all. Marcus nodded slowly, though anxiety rippled in his expression. He realized that transparency now extended to the public arena. This time, he stood by Vanessa's decision, determined to weather the storm at her side. Sure enough, the article hit the web a week later, complete with damning photos. The headline blared, Marcus Carrington's double life, Mistress tells all. The piece framed Marcus as a callous philanderer, though some of Annalise's claims were embellished or outright false. Vanessa's phone lit up with messages of sympathy and curiosity. Social media buzzed. The press camped outside their gates again. Marcus prepared a short statement, acknowledging a past indiscretion but pledging his commitment to rebuilding trust within his marriage. Behind closed doors, Vanessa wept at the public humiliation. Marcus cradled her as she sobbed, his own tears falling silently. I'm so sorry, he whispered. I put you through this. But the remarkable thing was that once the initial shock wore off, Vanessa felt a peculiar sense of relief. Now the truth was out. No more skeletons in the closet. In an odd way, she felt lighter, unburdened by hidden truths. Shortly after the article's release, Vanessa went into labor, almost 2 weeks earlier than expected. The chaos of the scandal melted away in the face of a far more urgent reality: the birth of their child. Marcus grabbed the hospital bag, hastily helping Vanessa into the car. In the delivery room, hours blurred. Pain, fear, and excitement wove together in a frantic tapestry. Marcus held Vanessa's hand, wiping sweat from her brow, whispering encouragement. Every contraction felt like a test of her resolve, but she clung to the determination that she'd endure anything for her baby. In the quiet dawn, cries of a newborn filled the room. A baby girl, her tiny lungs proclaiming her arrival. Vanessa collapsed into tears of relief, exhaustion, and joy. Marcus gently cradled the infant, overcome by a surge of love so fierce it stole his breath. In that moment, no scandal, no betrayal could overshadow the miracle of new life. They named her Isabella Grace Carrington. The doctors wrapped her in a soft pink blanket, and Vanessa marveled at the tiny fingers curled around her own. Marcus watched from the bedside, tears streaming freely. "She's perfect," Vanessa whispered, cheeks damp with emotion. "So helpless, and yet so strong." Marcus nodded, leaning in to kiss his wife's forehead. He found himself speechless, the magnitude of fatherhood washing over him. Every regret, every misdeed, felt amplified by the sight of this fragile new life he was responsible for. A nurse offered polite congratulations before stepping out, leaving the small family in a cocoon of soft, fluorescent light and profound tenderness. In that shared silence, they began to sense that maybe, amid the wreckage, they could forge a path forward for Isabella's sake. The postpartum period proved challenging. Vanessa wrestled with exhaustion, fluctuating hormones, and the demands of caring for a newborn. Marcus tried to assist in every way possible, changing diapers, late-night feedings, but the underlying tension sometimes resurfaced. Vanessa struggled with conflicting emotions. She would look at Marcus, doting on Isabella, and feel a rush of gratitude, only to be slammed by a memory of his affair moments later. The internal tug-of-war tore at her. She worried about postpartum depression, confiding in Lydia that some days she felt like she was drowning. Lydia urged her to lean on therapy and, if needed, seek medical advice. "You've been through a monumental trauma," Lydia said gently. "Healing won't be linear or simple, but you're not alone." Marcus tried to be understanding, though he felt helpless. Every time Vanessa winced at a passing memory, he was reminded of how deeply he had wounded her. Weeks turned into months, and gradually a new normal took shape. Marcus returned to work part-time, dividing his hours between the office and home. Vanessa embraced motherhood with a fierce devotion, channeling her energy into nurturing Isabella. They maintained therapy sessions, delving deeper into root causes and patterns of communication. There were setbacks, arguments triggered by a stray comment or a suspicious glance at Marcus's phone. But there were also victories: a relaxed dinner shared while Isabella napped, an impromptu dance in the living room where, for a brief moment, they laughed like they once had. Through tears and therapy, confessions and compromises, they inched toward rebuilding trust. Vanessa remained guarded, but each day she saw glimpses of the man she once loved. Marcus, for his part, recognized the enormity of her decision to stay. He vowed to spend the rest of his life proving her faith in him wasn't misplaced. A year after Isabella's birth, on a crisp winter morning, Vanessa stood at the edge of the estate's frozen lake, cradling her daughter. Marcus joined them, breath misting in the cold air. Together, They gazed across the surface, recalling how different their lives were just 1 year ago. A swirl of emotion filled Vanessa: anguish, gratitude, and a sense of cautious hope. Marcus gently placed a hand on her shoulder. "I'm sorry," he whispered again, though now it felt less like a desperate plea and more like an acknowledgement of their shared past. Vanessa turned to him, tears in her eyes. "I know," she said softly, pressing Isabella's small hand against his. "I know you're trying." He looked at his daughter, then at his wife. In that moment, he felt an overwhelming flood of love, tinged with remorse for the pain he'd caused. But in Vanessa's eyes, he saw the faint glow of acceptance, suggesting that while the past couldn't be erased, the future was theirs to redefine. Over time, the scandal faded from the headlines. Annalise moved on to new social circles, her name only surfacing occasionally in whispered rumors. For Marcus and Vanessa Carrington, life marched forward, messy, complicated, but also enriched by a depth they hadn't possessed before. Their marriage wasn't the same as it once was. It carried scars of betrayal and heartbreak, yet in its vulnerability, it also gained a raw authenticity. They learned to communicate openly, to voice fears before they festered. They discovered the power of genuine apology and the fragile gift of tentative forgiveness. Isabella served as a living reminder of what they stood to lose if they gave in to bitterness. Some days were good, others were tough, but each morning they awoke to try again. In that persistent effort lay a delicate, earnest hope, a hope that the worst phone call of their lives might ultimately pave the way for a deeper, more honest love. Marriage can buckle under the weight of betrayal, but it can also endure with the grit of honest effort. In the aftermath of Marcus Carrington's infidelity, he and Vanessa stood at the brink, yet the unyielding bond of parenthood and a glimmer of rediscovered affection guided them forward. Pain, anger, and regret demanded they tear down every illusion and start over from rock bottom. Through arduous therapy sessions, countless apologies, and a newborn who became both a tether and an inspiration, they dared to rebuild what had been broken. If this emotional rollercoaster gripped your heart, don't let the story end here. Show your support by liking this video, sharing it with those who appreciate real-life drama, and subscribing for more riveting narratives that dive into the raw essence of human relationships. Join us for more stories that remind us how fragile and how extraordinary love can be.